In question 11, you are given the angle 35 degrees and you are given the hypotenuse, which is 18, and you are asked to find x and y, where x represents the adjacent while y represents the opposite. So we need to look for an equation that can relate the opposite to the hypotenuse and the angle, and the same thing we can also look for an equation that relates the adjacent to the angle and the hypotenuse. Now regarding to the opposite, we know that sine the angle is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. In this case, the angle is 35, the opposite is y, and the hypotenuse is 18. So we have one equation with one unknown, which is y. So now we can solve for y. Y will be 18 times sine 35. And we can carry out the calculation. The same thing for x. We know that the equation that relates the angle, hypotenuse, and adjacent is cosine. Cosine the angle is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And now we can plug the value, 35, so cosine 35 degrees is equal to the adjacent, which is x, over the hypotenuse, which is 18, and we can go ahead and solve for x, which will be 18 times cosine 35 degrees. Okay, I'll let you do the calculations. The same thing applies on question 12, 13, and 14. You can see in number 12, we are given the angle and we are given the adjacent. So we can solve for the hypotenuse r using cosine the angle. This will enable us to solve for r. And then we can solve for y using tangent the angle, because tangent the angle is opposite over the adjacent, and we have the angle and we have the adjacent. We can solve for one unknown for each equation. In question number 13, you are given the opposite instead of the adjacent, so you can use sine the angle to solve for r, then you can use tangent the angle to solve for x. In question 14, the angle is unknown here. You will need to use the trigonometric function that relates the adjacent to the hypotenuse. You are given the adjacent 10 and the hypotenuse 23, and figure out the angle. We know this is cosine. Cosine the angle is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and then you can take cosine inverse of both sides and find the angle. Then after you find the angle, you can solve for the opposite. Okay, I hope you found this video educational. Thank you.